She woke up in a hospital bed with no memory of how she got there and no one to call. Her husband, the man who promised to love her, had left her to die. Bruised, broken, and erased from her own life, Senna Vale whispered the truth that shattered her. There's no one. But in the shadows of that sterile room stood a man who didn't belong there, a man whose empire was built on fear, whose name made Detroit tremble. Darian Cade. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he stayed. What Senna didn't know was that her husband's betrayal went far deeper than violence. He'd turned her into a ghost, a pawn, and soon, a corpse. But ghosts can come back. And some women don't just survive, they burn everything down. If you want to see how far vengeance can take a broken woman, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights hummed above Senna Vale's hospital bed, a sterile drone that matched the emptiness gnawing at her chest. Her body ached, every breath a reminder of ribs that had cracked under fists, skin that had split beneath rings, bones that had bent but refused to break. The morphine drip fed her numbness, but it couldn't touch the hollowness that had settled in her soul. She'd been awake for 3 hours. No one had come. The nurses moved in and out with practiced efficiency, their eyes sliding past hers, their voices soft with that particular brand of pity reserved for women like her. Women who showed up in emergency rooms with stories that didn't add up, with injuries that spoke louder than words, with silence wrapped around them like armor. Is there anyone we can call? The intake nurse had asked, clipboard poised, pen waiting. Senna had opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. The truth sat on her tongue like ash. There's no one. Her parents were gone, her mother to cancer 6 years ago, her father to a heart attack 2 years after that. She'd been an only child, raised in a small house in Ann Arbor where her mother taught piano and her father repaired watches. They'd loved her fiercely, completely, and when they died, they'd left her with memories and a small inheritance that Victor had convinced her to invest in their future. That money was gone now. Everything was gone. The friends she'd made in Detroit had vanished one by one, casualties of Victor's slow, methodical isolation. First, he'd questioned why she needed girls' nights when she had him. Then he'd pointed out how her friend Rachel drank too much, how her friend Keisha always had drama, how her friend Lisa was clearly jealous of their relationship. He'd never forbidden her from seeing them. He was too smart for that. He'd just made it exhausting. The questioning, the sulking, the arguments that lasted for hours, circling and circling until Senna couldn't remember what she'd wanted in the first place. Eventually, it was easier to say no, to stay home, to be available. Her coworkers at Little Scholars Kindergarten had tried, for a while. They'd noticed the changes, the long sleeves in summer, the careful makeup, the way Senna had stopped laughing at lunch, stopped joining them for happy hours, stopped being Senna. But Victor had taken care of that too. He'd shown up at the school unannounced, all charm and expensive cologne, bringing her flowers and kissing her in front of the kids. Just wanted to surprise my beautiful wife, he'd said, his hand tight on her waist, his smile perfect. The message was clear, I'm watching. And when the complaints started, parents saying she seemed distracted, unfocused, that their children deserved better, Victor had been sympathetic. Maybe you need a break, darling. Teaching is so stressful. Why don't you take some time off? Focus on us, on our marriage. She'd resigned 4 months ago. The principal had accepted with visible relief. Now lying in a bed that smelled of antiseptic and despair, Senna realized the truth. Victor hadn't just hurt her. He'd erased her, systematically, carefully, completely. She'd become a ghost in her own life. Mrs. Hallberg? A different nurse appeared, younger, with kind eyes and a nose ring. The police are here. They'd like to ask you some questions. Senna's heart seized. Where's my husband? The nurse's expression shifted, something careful, controlled. He hasn't arrived yet, but the officers can come back if you'd prefer. No. The word came out sharper than intended. Senna softened it. No, it's fine. Send them in. 2 detectives entered, a man and a woman, both carrying the weight of too many cases and not enough answers. The woman took the lead, her eyes scanning Senna's face with the quick assessment of someone who'd seen this before. Mrs. Hallberg, I'm Detective Chen. This is Detective Morrison. We'd like to ask you about what happened last night. Last night. The memory surfaced in fragments, sharp-edged and disjointed. Victor's voice, low and controlled. You embarrassed me tonight, Senna. The charity dinner. She'd been so careful, so quiet. But she'd smiled to the wrong person, the foundation director, an older man who'd asked about her background, who'd seemed genuinely interested when she mentioned teaching. He was just being polite, she'd whispered. Victor's hand had closed around her wrist. You were flirting. The drive home, his silence, the apartment door closing behind them. And then, Senna's breath caught. She forced it steady. I fell. Detective Chen's pen didn't move. You fell! Down the stairs. I was carrying laundry, and I lost my balance. Mrs. Halberg, I fell. Senna met the detective's eyes, held them. It was an accident. The lie tasted familiar. She'd told versions of it before. To the ER doctor 3 months ago when she'd broken her collarbone. To her neighbor 2 weeks ago when she'd appeared with a split lip. To herself, in the mirror, every single morning. Detective Morrison shifted his weight. Your husband called 911. He said he found you unconscious at the bottom of the stairs. Is that what you remember? Something cold slithered through Senna's chest. Victor had called 911. Victor had brought her here. Victor had left her here. Yes, she heard herself say. That's what happened. The detectives exchanged a look. Detective Chen pulled out a card, set it on the bedside table. If you remember anything else, or if you want to talk, call me, anytime. They left. The room felt larger without them, emptier. Senna stared at the ceiling and tried to remember how she'd gotten here. Not to the hospital, but to this. To being a woman who lied to police, who protected the man breaking her, who had no one to call because she'd let herself become no one at all. She'd met Victor Halberg 4 years ago at a fundraiser for the school. He'd been magnetic, tall, confident, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that made you feel like the only person in the room. He'd asked intelligent questions about early childhood education, had donated generously, had asked for her number with a smile that promised everything. Their courtship had been a whirlwind. Expensive dinners, weekend trips, flowers delivered to the school so often that her coworkers teased her. He'd proposed after 6 months, in front of her entire kindergarten class, with a ring that cost more than she made in a year. She should have seen the warning signs. The way he'd checked her phone, just curious who you're texting, the way he'd wanted to know her schedule down to the minute, the way he'd slowly, subtly made her world smaller and smaller, until it contained only him. But she'd been lonely. Her parents had just died, and Victor had seemed like a life raft in an ocean of grief. By the time she realized he was an anchor, she was already drowning. The door to her room opened again. Senna turned her head, expecting another nurse, another question. Instead, she saw a man she'd never met before. He was tall, taller than Victor, with dark hair and darker eyes, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. He moved with the kind of quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself, that simply was. There was something dangerous about him, something that made the air in the room shift. He didn't speak. He simply looked at her, really looked, not with pity or judgment, but with an assessment so thorough it felt like being seen for the first time in years. You're in the wrong room, Senna said, her voice hoarse. No. His voice was low, measured. I'm not. He pulled up the chair beside her bed and sat down. Senna's heart hammered. I don't know you. No, he agreed. You don't. Then why? Because, he said simply, you said there was no one. The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd whispered that to herself, alone in this room, before the nurses came, before the police came, before anyone. Hadn't she? Who are you? She demanded, fear sharpening her voice. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at the door, then back at her. My name is Darian Cade, and I think we should talk about your husband. Senna's blood turned to ice. I don't. Victor Halberg, Darian continued, his tone conversational, is a very successful man. Real estate development, property management. He's built quite a portfolio in Detroit over the last 5 years. He paused. Do you know how he's built it? Get out. Senna's voice shook. Get out or I'll call security. Darian didn't move. Victor owns 14 buildings across Detroit. In the last 3 years, 6 of them have burned down. Insurance payouts totaling $43 million. Strange coincidence, wouldn't you say? The room tilted. That's not... Victor doesn't... The fires are always ruled accidental. Faulty wiring, old gas lines, bad luck. Darian's eyes held hers. But here's what's interesting. Every building that burned had tenants who'd recently complained about maintenance. Tenants who'd threatened to report violations, to organize, to sue. And after the fires, those tenants disappeared. Some moved. Some couldn't be found. Some died. Senna couldn't breathe. Why are you telling me this? Because, Darian said softly, the most recent fire was 2 months ago, a building on Gratiot Avenue. 4 people died, and the insurance claim was filed in your name, Mrs. Halberg. The world stopped. That's impossible, Senna whispered. I've never... You're listed as co-owner on all of Victor's properties. Did you know that? Darian leaned forward slightly. When you signed your marriage certificate, you also signed papers making you a partner in his business. Papers that make you legally responsible for everything he does. Papers that make you his perfect scapegoat. Senna's vision blurred. She remembered the wedding, the way Victor had brought documents to her the morning of, papers that needed to be signed before the ceremony. Just formalities, he'd said. Trust paperwork, so we're protected. She'd signed without reading, her hand shaking with excitement, with love, with trust. He's been building a case against you, Darian continued. Slowly, carefully. Bank accounts in your name with suspicious deposits, property transfers, email trails. If anyone ever investigates the fires, the trail leads straight to you. Not him. You. Why? The word broke on a sob. Why would he do that? Insurance, Darian said simply. Life insurance. You're worth more dead than alive, Mrs. Halberg. And your recent accidents? His eyes flicked to her bruises. They're not accidents, they're documentation. A pattern of instability, depression, reckless behavior. So when you finally die, in a fire probably, in one of his buildings, it'll look like suicide. Or incompetence. Either way, Victor walks away clean, 40 million richer, and completely untouchable. Senna shook her head, tears streaming now. No, you're wrong. Victor wouldn't... Where is he? Darian's question was quiet. Where's your husband right now? The question hung in the air like smoke. Victor hadn't come. He'd called 911, brought her to the hospital, and then he'd left. No flowers, no worried calls to the nurse's station, no hand holding hers while she woke up scared and alone. He'd left her here to be processed, documented, photographed, evidence of instability. Another piece in his careful construction. Who are you? Senna asked again, but this time the question meant something different. Darian stood. Someone who can help you, if you want it. Why would you help me? You don't know me. No, he agreed, but I know your husband, and I know what he's capable of. Something dark flickered across his face. Victor Halberg is a very dangerous man, Mrs. Halberg. He's destroyed lives, ended lives, and he's been using Detroit's systems, my city, to do it. That makes him my problem. My city. The words registered slowly. Senna looked at him again, really looked. The expensive suit, the quiet authority, the way nurses had glanced at him when he entered but hadn't challenged him. You're a criminal, she breathed. Yes. No hesitation, no apology. Then why should I trust you? Darian moved toward the door, then paused. Because I'm the only one who's here. The truth of it cut deeper than any of Victor's fists. If you want out, Darian said, truly out, not just from the hospital, but from him, from the trap he's built around you, you call me. He placed a card on the table beside Detective Chen's. I'll make sure you disappear somewhere he can't find you, no questions asked. And if I don't call? His expression didn't change. Then I'll read about your death in the papers, and your husband will add another building to his portfolio. He left. Senna sat in the silence, her mind reeling. Nothing made sense. A stranger walks into her hospital room and tells her that her husband, the man she married, the man she loved, has been systematically framing her for murder and arson, preparing to kill her for insurance money. It was insane. Except Victor hadn't come. Except she was listed on properties she'd never seen. Except the accidents had been getting worse. The broken collarbone, the split lip, the cracked ribs. Each one more violent, more dangerous. Except she had no one. No job. No friends. No family. Except she was already a ghost. Senna reached for Darian's card with trembling fingers. Heavy stock. Embossed lettering. Just a phone number. No name. The door opened again. This time it was Victor. He looked perfect, worried, disheveled just enough to seem authentic, his eyes red-rimmed as if he'd been crying. He rushed to her bedside, took her hand. "Senna, thank God. I've been so worried. They wouldn't let me back until you were stable." He pressed his lips to her knuckles. "I thought I'd lost you." His touch made her skin crawl. "What happened?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "You don't remember?" Concern flooded his features. "Darling, you fell. Down the stairs. I found you at the bottom, unconscious. There was so much blood." His voice broke convincingly. "I was terrified." He was lying. She could see it now, could see the calculation behind his eyes, the performance in his grief. How had she never seen it before? "The doctor says you have a concussion," Victor continued. "Cracked ribs. Some internal bruising. You're lucky you didn't break your neck." He squeezed her hand. "We need to be more careful, Senna. These accidents, they're getting worse. Maybe we should talk to someone. A therapist. Someone who can help you with the stress you've been under." There it was. The careful construction, your accidents, your stress, your instability. "I want to go home," Senna heard herself say. Victor's face brightened. "Of course. I'll talk to the doctors, get you discharged. We'll take care of you at home, together." He kissed her forehead. His cologne was expensive. His suit was immaculate. His lies were perfect. And for the first time in 4 years, Senna Vale saw her husband clearly. He was going to kill her. They discharged her the next morning with prescriptions for pain medication and instructions to rest. Victor played the devoted husband flawlessly, helping her dress, supporting her weight, thanking the nurses with genuine warmth. In the car, he was silent. Not angry silence, planning silence. Their apartment was in Midtown, a modern building with a doorman and security cameras and everything that should have made Senna feel safe. Instead, walking through the lobby felt like entering a cage. Victor helped her to the bedroom, arranged pillows, brought water. "I need to go into the office for a few hours," he said. "Handle some urgent matters. Will you be all right?" "Yes." Senna kept her voice small, compliant, the way he needed it. "I'll be back by dinner. Call me if you need anything." He kissed her cheek. "Rest, darling. You need to heal." The moment the door closed, Senna moved. Pain screamed through her ribs, but she ignored it. She went to Victor's office, the room she wasn't allowed to enter without permission. The door was locked, but she knew where he kept the key, under the desk, taped to the underside. Her hands shook as she unlocked it. The office was pristine, mahogany desk, leather chair, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She moved to the filing cabinet, her heart hammering. It was locked too. But Victor was methodical, predictable. She tried his birthday. It opened. Inside, she found folders, neat, organized, property documents, insurance policies, financial statements, and there, a folder with her name. Senna pulled it out. Inside were bank statements for accounts she'd never opened, property deeds with her forged signature, email printouts allegedly sent from her address, discussing property maintenance, insurance claims, building violations, a medical file documenting her mental health concerns, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, from a psychiatrist she'd never seen, life insurance policies, hers, 3 of them, totaling $12 million. And at the bottom, a manila envelope. She opened it. Photos spilled out. Buildings, burned, charred frames against gray Detroit skies. And people, burned too. Senna's stomach heaved. She made it to the bathroom before she vomited. When she could breathe again, she returned to the office, took photos of everything with her phone, the documents, the policies, the pictures. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She was replacing the folder when she saw it. Another file, tucked in the back. No label. Inside was a blueprint. A building on Gratiot Avenue. The same building from the news 2 months ago. 4 people dead. And in Victor's handwriting, notes, measurements, calculations. Exit routes marked in red. Security camera blind spots circled. At the bottom, a date. Next week. And an address she recognized. The apartment building where her former coworker Rachel lived. Horror flooded through her. Victor wasn't done. He was planning another fire. Senna photographed everything. Then she put it all back exactly as she'd found it, locked the filing cabinet, locked the office door. She made it back to bed before her legs gave out. For an hour, she lay there staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning. She could go to the police, show them the documents, the photos, the evidence. But Victor had already built his case against her. Her name was on everything. The emails came from her account. The bank statements were in her name. A good lawyer, and Victor would have the best, would argue she was trying to frame him, to cover her own crimes. And even if they believed her, how long would an investigation take? Days? Weeks? Victor was planning another fire. More people would die, unless she stopped him. Senna pulled out the 2 cards from her hospital visit, Detective Chen's and Darian Cade's. She stared at them for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. The voice that answered was measured, unsurprised. Mrs. Hallberg? How did you know? Senna asked. About Victor, about the fires. That's a longer conversation, Darian said. Are you safe right now? He's at work. He'll be back in a few hours. Then we don't have much time. I'm sending a car. Be ready in 20 minutes. Where are we going? Somewhere your husband can't find you, Darian said. Somewhere we can talk without cameras, without ears, without interruptions. And then what? There was a pause. Then you decide what happens next. You're not a victim anymore, Mrs. Hallberg. You're a weapon. The question is whether you want to use it. Senna closed her eyes, opened them. 20 minutes, she said, and hung up. She moved quickly, ignoring the pain. A bag with clothes, documents, her phone. The photos she'd taken. The evidence of Victor's careful construction. At the last moment, she grabbed her wedding ring, turned it in her fingers. 4 years. 4 years of loving a man who'd been planning her murder from the beginning. She left the ring on the nightstand. 18 minutes later, a black car pulled up outside the building. No markings. Tinted windows. Senna walked out of her apartment, out of her marriage, out of her carefully constructed cage. She didn't look back. The driver was silent, professional. They drove through Detroit's streets as afternoon light slanted through buildings, casting long shadows. Senna watched the city pass, a place that had become unfamiliar to her, foreign, a maze of Victor's making. They crossed into a different neighborhood, older buildings, quieter streets. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a warehouse. Darian was waiting. This way? He said simply. She followed him through concrete corridors to an elevator. Up. The doors opened into a space that stole her breath. It was a loft, massive, industrial, with exposed brick and steel beams and windows that overlooked the river. Beautiful and severe. Nothing like Victor's calculated luxury. Sit, Darian said, gesturing to a leather couch. Would you like something to drink? Answers, Senna said. I want answers. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey anyway, handed her one. She took it. 3 years ago, Darian began, settling into a chair across from her. A building burned on the east side. An old warehouse converted to artist studios. 6 people died. One of them was a painter named Elena Vasquez. His voice remained steady, but something shifted in his eyes. She was talented, brilliant. She was also one of the few people who refused to be bought, intimidated, or silenced when Victor Hallberg tried to force her out. She'd organized the other tenants, filed complaints, gone to the media. She was winning. He took a slow sip of whiskey. The fire was ruled accidental, but Elena had called me 2 days before she died. She said she was being followed, that someone had offered her money to leave, then threatened her when she refused. She asked for my help. And you didn't give it to her, Senna said quietly. I was in Chicago, a business matter. I told her I'd be back in a week, that she should go to the police. His jaw tightened. She died 3 days later. By the time I got back, your husband had already collected his insurance payout. The tenants who survived didn't want to talk. The investigation was closed. You loved her. She was my sister. The words hung in the air like smoke. Senna's grip tightened on her glass. Why didn't you go after him then? I tried, but Victor's careful. Everything points to accidents, bad luck, unfortunate circumstances, and the people who might testify, the tenants, the inspectors, the investigators, they all had reasons to stay quiet. Money, fear, both. So you waited. I built a case. Slowly, carefully, the same way he builds his fires. Darian leaned forward, but I needed proof, something concrete, something that couldn't be explained away or buried. And now you think I can give you that? I think you're the only one who can. He met her eyes. You have access to his files, his plans, his life. You're his wife, his partner, his scapegoat. And most importantly, you're the one person he won't see coming. Senna thought about the folder in Victor's office, the blueprints, the next fire. He's planning another one, she said. A building on Gratiot, where my friend Rachel lives, next week. Darian's expression didn't change, but the air in the room shifted. Are you certain? She pulled out her phone, showed him the photos. I found these in his office. He studied them, his face carved from stone. This is good, very good. But it's not enough. We need him on record, planning, executing. We need him caught in the act. How? You go back. Fear spiked through her. He'll know I was in his office. He'll know exactly what you let him know, Darian interrupted. You're injured, confused. The medication makes you fuzzy. You were looking for aspirin and you got lost. Whatever story you need to tell, you sell it. Because right now, you're still his victim, still his pawn, still exactly what he thinks you are. And if he doesn't believe me, then he kills you sooner than planned. Darian's voice was matter of fact. This is the risk. I won't lie to you about it. Going back into that apartment, into his reach, it's dangerous, potentially fatal, but it's also the only way to get close enough to stop him before more people die. Senna's hand shook. She set down the whiskey before she dropped it. I know you're scared, Darian said, his voice gentler. You should be. But I also know what I saw in that hospital room. A woman who'd been beaten down, erased, destroyed, but who was still breathing, still fighting, still here. He stood, moved to the window. I can't make this decision for you. If you want out, truly out, I'll set you up with a new identity, money, a fresh start somewhere Victor will never find you. You can walk away from all of this. And the next fire? Senna asked quietly. I'll find another way to stop it. Will you? She stood too, ignoring the pain. You've been trying for 3 years. How many more people have died while you looked for another way? Darian turned to face her. I'm not brave, Senna said. I'm not strong. I'm a kindergarten teacher who let herself become invisible because it was easier than fighting. Then fight now. He'll kill me. Probably. No comfort, no false promises. But you'll die anyway if you run. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year. But eventually, you'll look over your shoulder one too many times and realize you're not living, you're just haunting the edges of your own life. The truth of it settled in her bones. If I do this, Senna said slowly, if I go back and help you catch him, what happens after? To me? You get your life back, your name cleared, your story told. Darian's eyes held hers. And Victor Hallberg spends the rest of his life in prison, knowing the woman he tried to erase is the one who ended him. Senna walked to the window, looked out at Detroit. Somewhere in this city, Rachel was living her life, unaware that she'd been marked for death. Somewhere, other people were walking into buildings, signing leases, trusting that the structures around them were safe. Somewhere, Victor was planning his next move. She turned back to Darian. What do I need to do? The plan was simple in theory, deadly in execution. Senna would return home before Victor, act confused and medicated, and gradually begin leaving traces, small mistakes that would make him believe she was unraveling. Meanwhile, Darian's people would install surveillance equipment in the apartment, hidden cameras and audio devices that would capture everything Victor said and did when he thought he was alone. The key, Darian explained, spreading blueprints of her apartment across the table, is making him feel secure, powerful. He needs to believe you're still under his control, still the broken woman he's constructed. The moment he senses you're a threat, he'll accelerate his timeline. How long do we have? Senna asked. The building on Gratiot is scheduled for demolition next month. If Victor wants to burn it for insurance, he'll do it before then. Based on his pattern, I'd say we have a week, maybe less. A week to catch a killer. A week to stay alive. Darian's associate, a woman named Maya with sharp eyes and efficient movements, drove Senna back to Midtown just as sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and blood. She'd been gone for 3 hours, long enough to worry Victor, not long enough to panic him. You have my number, Maya said as Senna opened the car door. Any trouble, any sign he knows? You call immediately. Don't wait. Don't think you can handle it. Senna nodded, her mouth dry. The doorman greeted her with concern. Mrs. Hallberg, are you all right? Mr. Hallberg was looking for you earlier. I went for a walk, Senna said, making her voice vague, slightly disconnected. Needed air. The medication makes me foggy. Understanding crossed his face, the kind reserved for fragile things. Of course. He's upstairs, waiting. The elevator ride felt eternal. Senna watched the numbers climb, each floor bringing her closer to the performance of her life. She thought about the kindergarten classrooms where she used to teach, the way children believed so completely in the stories she told them. She'd been good at that once, creating worlds, inhabiting characters, making fiction feel real. She needed to be good at it now. The apartment door was unlocked. Victor stood in the living room, his phone pressed to his ear, his back to her. He turned as she entered. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, his voice tight. He ended the call. Where were you? Senna blinked slowly, letting confusion cloud her features. I went out. Out where? I needed air. I think I walked to the park? She touched her forehead. The pills they gave me. Everything's blurry. Victor's jaw unclenched slightly. He moved toward her, took her shoulders gently. Senna, you can't just leave without telling me. I came home and you were gone. I was worried. I'm sorry. She let her voice crack. I'm so confused lately. I can't think straight. It's the stress, Victor said, guiding her to the couch. The accident, the medication, everything you've been through. You need rest. Let me take care of you. He brought her water, pills, her actual prescription she checked, and tucked a blanket around her. The devoted husband, the concerned partner. She swallowed the medication and watched him watch her, both of them performing their roles flawlessly. That night she lay in bed beside him, feeling the weight of his arm across her waist, listening to his breathing even out into sleep. In the darkness, she thought about Darian's sister, about the other victims, about Rachel sleeping peacefully in a building marked for destruction. She thought about the woman she used to be, before Victor, before the fear. That woman had believed in goodness, in safety, in happy endings. This woman knew better. The next morning, Victor kissed her forehead before leaving for work. I have meetings all day. Will you be all right? Yes, Senna said softly. I'll rest. 30 minutes after he left, Darian's team arrived. They moved like ghosts, 3 people in maintenance uniforms with legitimate building work orders that Darian had somehow procured. Maya directed them with hand signals pointing to corners, outlets, light fixtures. We're installing 6 cameras and 8 audio pickups, she told Senna. You won't be able to see them, neither will he. They're motion activated and transmit to an encrypted server. Everything he does, everything he says, we'll have recorded. What about me? Senna asked. What if I say something that you won't? Maya's tone was firm. You're going to be the perfect victim. Confused, compliant, slowly falling apart. You'll spend your days resting, watching television, maybe calling a friend or two to talk about how worried you are, how the medication is affecting you. Create a narrative of decline. And if he checks my phone, let him. We've cloned it. Everything you do, we see first. If you need to contact us, use the burner. She handed Senna a basic flip phone. Taped under the bathroom sink, behind the cleaning supplies, only use it in emergencies. They worked for 90 minutes, efficient and thorough. When they left, the apartment looked exactly as it had before, but now it was a trap waiting to be sprung. Senna spent the afternoon doing exactly what Maya had suggested, existing in a haze of medication and confusion. She called Rachel. Senna? Her former coworker's voice was warm, surprised. Oh my God, I haven't heard from you in forever. How are you? Senna let her voice tremble. I've been better. I had an accident. Fell down the stairs. Jesus, are you okay? Physically, yes. But Rachel, I've been so confused lately. The doctors think it might be the medication or stress or, I don't know. I can't think straight. Sometimes I can't remember whole days. They talked for 20 minutes, and Senna painted a picture of a woman losing her grip on reality. When she hung up, she felt sick. Rachel would tell other people. The story would spread. Evidence of her instability exactly as Victor needed. But it would also create witnesses. People who could testify later about her state of mind, about the timeline, about what she'd said and when. Victor came home at 7 with takeout from her favorite restaurant, a small Italian place in Greektown where they used to go when they were first dating. He'd remembered her order perfectly: fettuccine alfredo with chicken, no mushrooms, extra garlic bread. I thought you could use comfort food, he said, setting the containers on the dining table. They ate together, and Victor talked about his day, meetings with investors, site inspections, paperwork. He was relaxed, charming, the man she'd fallen in love with. She could almost believe this was real, that the past 4 years had been a nightmare she'd imagined. But then she caught him watching her, his eyes calculating as she took another pain pill, as she fumbled with her fork, as she excused herself to the bathroom and took slightly longer than necessary. He was documenting her decline too. After dinner, she curled up on the couch while he worked in his office, the locked room where her future death was carefully planned. She watched television without seeing it, her mind on the cameras recording everything, on Darian watching feeds somewhere across the city, on the countdown ticking in her head. 6 days until the fire. Maybe less. She needed Victor to make a mistake, to say something incriminating, to meet with someone involved, to do anything that would give them leverage beyond the circumstantial evidence in his files. The opportunity came 2 days later. Victor's phone rang during breakfast. He glanced at the screen, and something shifted in his expression, a tightening around his eyes, a tension in his shoulders. I need to take this, he said, walking to his office. Senna stood, moved quietly to the hallway. The office door wasn't completely closed. She could hear his voice, low and controlled. I told you not to call me here. No, the timeline hasn't changed. Thursday night. Building will be empty. Tenants have been notified about the gas line inspection. I don't care what you have to do. Make sure the cameras are down from 11 to midnight. Yes, the usual account. Silence as he listened. She's not a problem, trust me, because she can barely remember what day it is. The medication has her completely... No, after. Once the claim is processed, then we handle the final details. Senna's blood turned to ice. Final details. Her death. He was discussing her death like a business transaction. She forced herself to move back to the kitchen, to be sitting innocently at the table when Victor emerged 10 minutes later. Everything okay? She asked. Fine. Just work. He kissed the top of her head. I need to go into the office early today. Will you be all right? Of course. After he left, she went to the bathroom, retrieved the burner phone, and texted Maya. He confirmed Thursday night. Gratiot Building. Cameras disabled 11 to midnight. The response came immediately. Good. We'll be ready. But ready for what? They had his words on tape, but good lawyers could argue he was discussing legitimate construction work, safety inspections, normal business operations. They needed more. That afternoon, Senna made a decision that terrified her. She went back into Victor's office. The key was where she'd left it. The filing cabinet opened with the same soft click. She pulled out the folder with the Gracio blueprints, her hand steady this time, and photographed new pages she'd missed before. Communications with the building inspector. Payment records to a security company. A list of tenant names with check marks beside most of them, all moved out except for 3 apartments. Rachel's was one of them. She was replacing the folder when she saw it. A flash drive tucked behind the hanging files. Unmarked. Innocuous. She shouldn't. It was too risky. If Victor noticed it was gone, but if it contained evidence, real evidence, proof of his involvement in the fires, Senna grabbed it, closed the cabinet, locked it, returned the key. Her heart hammered as she went to the bedroom, booted up her laptop, and inserted the drive. Files appeared. Hundreds of them. Photos, spreadsheets, videos. She clicked on a video file at random. The footage was grainy, black and white, timestamped from 14 months ago. A building at night. A figure in dark clothing approaching a side entrance, working on something near the gas meter. The camera angle shifted. The figure turned slightly. Victor. Senna's breath caught. She clicked on another video. Different building, different timestamp, same figure, same methodical movements. He'd recorded himself. He'd documented his own crimes. But why? She opened a spreadsheet. Insurance payouts organized by date and property. Next to each was a percentage and a name. Names she didn't recognize. Except one. Councilman James Petrov, City Planning Commission. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. Victor wasn't working alone. He had partners, people in positions of power who fast-tracked his permits, delayed inspections, ensured investigations went nowhere. And he'd kept evidence of their involvement as insurance, as leverage, as protection. This was bigger than she'd thought. Bigger than Darian knew. She copied the entire contents of the flash drive to her laptop, then returned it to Victor's office exactly where she'd found it. Then she called Maya. I need to see Darian, now. An hour later, she was back in the warehouse loft, her laptop open on Darian's conference table, the videos playing on the large screen. Darian watched in silence, his face unreadable. When the last video ended, he turned to her. Where did you find this? Flash drive in his office, hidden behind the files. Did you replace it? Yes, exactly where it was. Darian was quiet for a long moment. He's been building a safety net, evidence against everyone involved, so if he ever gets caught, he can trade information for immunity. There's a councilman on that list, Senna said. City planning. He's been helping Victor. Not just helping, enabling. Darian pulled up one of the spreadsheets. These payments, they're systematic, monthly, for years. Petrov has been on Victor's payroll since the beginning. Can we use this, Senna asked, to stop him? We can destroy him. Darian's voice was quiet, dangerous. Not just him, everyone involved. But we need to be strategic. If we move too early, they'll scatter, cover their tracks. We need them all in one place, committed to the crime, past the point of retreat. The fire, Senna said. Thursday night. Yes, we let Victor proceed with his plan. We document everything, the preparation, the execution, the aftermath. We catch him in the act, with witnesses, evidence, no room for doubt. And the building? Senna's voice sharpened. The people still living there? Will be evacuated before anything happens. Darian met her eyes. I'm not my enemy, Mrs. Halberg. I don't sacrifice innocent lives for revenge. Then what's the plan? He pulled up blueprints of the Grayshit building. Thursday night, the remaining tenants will receive an emergency call about a gas leak. They'll evacuate. My people will be waiting to ensure everyone gets out safely. Meanwhile, we'll have surveillance on every entrance, every exit. When Victor arrives, and he will arrive, he can't resist watching his work. We'll have him on camera, at the scene, during the commission of the crime. What about the security cameras he's having disabled? We'll let his people disable them. Our cameras will be separate, hidden, military grade. He won't know they're there. And after, Senna asked, when he realizes the building didn't burn, that no one died, that he's been caught? He'll come home, Darian said simply. To you. Angry, desperate, dangerous. That's when you need to be ready. Fear spiked through her. Ready how? To end this. He slid something across the table. A small device, like the car key fob. Panic button. One press and my people will be there in 3 minutes. Keep it on you at all times. Senna picked it up, felt its weight. 3 minutes is a long time when someone's trying to kill you. Then don't wait until he's already attacking. Darian's voice was hard. The moment he walks through that door Thursday night, if his eyes are cold, if his energy is wrong, if you feel threatened, you press it. Don't hesitate. Don't second guess. Press it and lock yourself in the bathroom until we arrive. She nodded, slipping the device into her pocket. There's something else, Darian said, pulling out a folder. We've been investigating Victor's finances, following the money. There's a storage unit registered under one of his shell companies. We think it might contain additional evidence, accelerants, equipment, documents. You want me to find out where it is? Only if you can do it safely. We can obtain a warrant after Thursday, but if there's anything there that corroborates the videos, it would strengthen the case. Senna thought about Victor's office, about how carefully he organized everything. He has a ledger, property addresses, account numbers. If the storage unit is part of his operation, it'll be in there. Can you access it without him knowing? Yes, but I'll need time. He can't be home. Darian considered this. Tomorrow night, there's a fundraiser for Councilman Petrov. Victor will be expected to attend. It'll give you at least 3 hours. He'll want me to go with him. Then be too sick. The medication, the stress. You're having a bad day. He'll go alone rather than cancel. Appearances matter to him. It was a good plan, a dangerous plan. Senna went home that evening with her laptop, the panic button, and a growing sense that she was walking a tightrope over an abyss. One wrong step, one moment of carelessness, and Victor would know. And if Victor knew, she forced the thought away. She'd come too far to doubt now. That night, Victor was tender with her. He drew her a bath, added lavender oil, lit candles. He brought her wine and sat on the edge of the tub, talking softly about their future. The house they'd buy, the trips they'd take, the life they'd build together. All lies, all performance. But she performed too, letting tears slip down her cheeks as she thanked him for being patient with her, for staying by her side through everything. I don't deserve you, she whispered. You deserve everything, Victor said, stroking her hair, and I'm going to give it to you. After you're dead, Senna heard beneath the words. After I collect the insurance and start fresh. She went to bed that night wondering how long he'd been planning this. Had he known from the beginning that she was temporary? Or had she served her purpose for a while before becoming more valuable dead than alive? It didn't matter. Either way, she'd been marked for death the moment she'd signed her marriage certificate. Wednesday arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. Senna spent the morning setting the stage for her evening performance, calling the doctor to complain about side effects, moving slowly through the apartment like every step hurt, letting Victor see her struggle. Maybe you should see someone, he suggested over lunch. A specialist. This confusion, the memory problems, it's not normal. After the fundraiser, Senna said, I don't want to ruin your evening with Councilman Petrov. You're coming with me, Victor said. It wasn't a question. I don't think I can. Senna touched her temple. I've had a headache all day, and the thought of crowds, of having to smile and make conversation, I'll just embarrass you. She watched the calculation cross his face. He needed to attend, needed to maintain his relationship with Petrov, needed to be seen supporting the councilman whose corruption had made his empire possible. Are you sure? He asked. I don't like leaving you alone. I'll be fine. I'll take my medication and sleep. You go. It's important. Relief flickered in his eyes. If you're certain. I am. Thursday would be the fire. Tonight was her chance to find the storage unit, to gather the final pieces of evidence that would bury him. Victor left at 6, dressed in a tuxedo, smelling of expensive cologne. He kissed her cheek. Call me if you need anything. I will. The moment the door closed, Senna moved. She had 3 hours, maybe less. She went straight to Victor's office, pulled the key from its hiding place, opened the filing cabinet. The ledger was in the back, leather-bound and detailed. She photographed every page, her hands steady now, her fear transformed into focus. Property addresses, shell company names, account numbers, offshore holdings. And there, a storage facility in Hamtramck, Unit 247, registered under Halberg Holdings, LLC. She photographed it, then kept searching. There had to be more, something that would... Her phone buzzed, a text from Victor. How are you feeling? I can come home if you need me. Her blood went cold. Was he testing her? Checking to see if she was awake, alert, somewhere she shouldn't be? She forced her breathing steady and typed, sleeping, headache better, enjoy the event. His response came quickly. Rest well, love you. The words made her skin crawl. She returned to the ledger, photographing the last pages when she found it. A section labeled Final Phase. Dated for next month. Inside was a death certificate. Blank, but with her name already filled in. Cause of death, smoke inhalation. Location, Gratiot Avenue building. He'd already prepared the paperwork. Senna's hands shook. She steadied them, photographed the certificate, replaced everything exactly as it was. She was locking the filing cabinet when she heard the apartment door open. Terror flooded through her. He couldn't be back. It had only been 90 minutes. Footsteps in the hallway. Senna shoved the key under the desk, her heart hammering. She couldn't get out of the office without being seen. She was trapped. The footsteps came closer. She pressed against the wall beside the door, barely breathing, her hand finding the panic button in her pocket. The footsteps paused outside the office, then continued past, toward the bedroom. Not Victor's gate, someone lighter, quicker. A woman's voice, muffled, talking on a phone. "I'm inside, checking the usual places. Give me 5 minutes." Someone Victor had sent. To verify she was asleep? To plant something? Senna's mind raced. If she stayed hidden and was discovered, there'd be no explanation. But if she confronted the intruder, if she acted confused, medicated, barely coherent, she made her choice. She walked out of the office, stumbling slightly, rubbing her eyes. The woman spun around, mid-30s, professional clothing, a briefcase in her hand. Her eyes widened. "Mrs. Hallberg, I didn't realize you were awake." "Who are you?" Senna made her voice foggy, uncertain. "I'm Catherine Mills, from your husband's office. He asked me to drop off some documents." A lie. Victor would have mentioned it, and no one used physical documents anymore, not for routine work. "Oh." Senna swayed slightly. "I'm sorry. The medication, I'm not thinking clearly." "It's fine." Catherine's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'll just leave these in his office and go." She moved toward the office. Senna had to stop her. "Wait." Senna touched the wall for support. "Victor doesn't like people in his office without him. Company policy. He's very strict about it." Catherine hesitated, her hand on the doorknob. "I can take the documents," Senna offered. "Leave them on his desk for him." The woman's eyes hardened, just slightly. "That's not necessary. Mr. Hallberg specifically asked me to file them." "But he's not here to unlock the cabinet," Senna gestured vaguely. "He has the only key." She was gambling everything on this. If Catherine knew about the hidden key, if Victor had told her, "Oh!" Catherine's expression shifted, frustrated. "He didn't mention that. I'll come back tomorrow." "I can tell him you stopped by." "Thank you." Catherine moved toward the door, then paused. "Mrs. Hallberg? Are you all right? You seem unwell." "Just tired," Senna said. "The doctors have me on so much medication. Sometimes I can't tell if I'm awake or dreaming." Understanding crossed Catherine's face. The same expression the doorman had worn, the nurses, everyone who saw her now. Poor, broken Senna Hallberg, falling apart. "Get some rest," Catherine said, and left. Senna waited until she heard the apartment door close, then locked it, engaged the deadbolt, and collapsed against the wall. Her phone buzzed. Maya. "We saw. Woman identified as Catherine Mills, Victor's administrative assistant. Likely checking to verify you're sedated, possibly planting evidence. You handled it perfectly." Senna texted back. "Found storage unit location. Hamtramck. Also found blank death certificate with my name." Jesus. "Send photos." "And Senna? Tomorrow night, after the fire doesn't happen, Victor will come home angry. Be ready." Be ready. As if she could prepare for her husband trying to kill her. She sent the photos of the ledger, the death certificate, the storage unit information. Then she did what any terrified woman would do. She poured a glass of wine, took her actual medication, and went to bed. Victor came home at 11. She pretended to be asleep as he undressed, slid into bed beside her. "Senna?" he whispered. She didn't respond. He was quiet for a long moment. Then she felt his hand on her throat. Not squeezing, just resting there. Feeling her pulse. Testing. She kept her breathing even, deep, the rhythm of sleep. His hand moved away. In the darkness, she heard him whisper something so quiet she almost missed it. Soon. Thursday morning arrived with the weight of an executioner's blade hanging in the air. Senna woke to find Victor already dressed, standing at the bedroom window with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and clipped. "Everything's confirmed for tonight, 11 sharp, and make sure those cameras stay down until I give the signal." He paused, listening. No, she won't be a problem. I'll handle it personally if needed. He ended the call and turned to find Senna watching him. Morning, he said smoothly, crossing to kiss her forehead. How are you feeling? Better. She sat up slowly, wincing for effect. The headache's gone. Good. I have to go out of town today. Business meeting in Ann Arbor. I won't be back until late. His eyes searched her face. Will you be all right alone? He was establishing an alibi. Being far from Detroit when the fire started, with witnesses who could testify he was nowhere near Gratiot Avenue. Of course, Senna said. What time will you be home? Midnight, maybe later. Don't wait up. He straightened his tie. There's food in the refrigerator. Take your medication. Rest. I will. He kissed her once more, and she tasted the lie on his lips. Then he was gone, and she was alone in the apartment that had become both prison and stage. She waited 30 minutes before calling Maya. He just left. Says he'll be in Ann Arbor all day. We know. We've been tracking his car since he pulled out of the garage. He's heading toward the storage unit in Hamtramck. Senna's pulse quickened. He's getting the equipment. Accelerants probably, timers, whatever he needs for tonight. We have surveillance on the facility. If he goes to Unit 247, we'll document everything. And the building, the tenants? Evacuation starts at 10 tonight. We've coordinated with the gas company. There'll be a legitimate inspection that finds a legitimate leak. Everyone will be out by 10:30, your friend Rachel included. Relief flooded through Senna. She'll be safe. Everyone will be safe, except Victor. Maya's voice hardened. He's going to show up to an empty building, and when he does, we'll have him on camera committing arson, attempted murder, insurance fraud, everything. What do you need me to do? Stay home. Stay visible. The apartment surveillance needs to show you were nowhere near the scene. When Victor comes back tonight, and he will come back probably in a rage, you stay calm. Let him talk. The cameras will catch everything he says. And if he tries to hurt me? You press the panic button. We'll be 3 minutes away. Maybe less. 3 minutes. Senna touched the device in her pocket, felt its hard edges. Maya? What if this doesn't work? What if he realizes it's a trap and runs? There was a pause. Then Darian will find him. And when he does, it won't be police who handle it. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Senna didn't ask for clarification. She didn't need to. She spent the day in strange suspension, moving through the apartment like a ghost haunting her own life. She made coffee, watched television without seeing it, took her medication at the prescribed times, aware that cameras were watching, documenting her compliance, her routine, her perfect alibi. At 2 p.m, her phone rang. Rachel. Senna, the strangest thing just happened. The gas company called. There's an emergency inspection tonight at my building. They're evacuating everyone for a few hours. Senna forced surprise into her voice. Are you serious? I know, right? They say there might be a leak. They're putting us up in a hotel for the night, all expenses paid. It's probably nothing, but better safe than sorry. Definitely. Senna's throat tightened. Where will you go? There's a Marriott downtown they're booking for us. Should be an adventure. Rachel laughed. Hey, once this is all sorted and you're feeling better, we should get coffee. I miss you. I miss you too. They talked for a few more minutes, and when Senna hung up, tears were streaming down her face. Rachel had no idea how close she'd come to dying. None of the tenants did. They'd go to their hotel rooms tonight, complain about the inconvenience, and wake up tomorrow with their lives intact. Because Darian had intervened, because Senna had found the courage to fight back. At 6 o'clock, Maya texted. Victor visited storage unit, retrieved duffel bag. We have footage. He's heading back toward Detroit now. At 8. Building evacuation complete. All tenants accounted for. Cameras in place. At 9:30, Victor's car spotted 3 blocks from Gratiot. He's early. Senna paced the apartment, her nerves stretched wire-thin. She imagined Victor parking in the shadows, checking his watch, waiting for the moment when the security cameras would go dark and he could move unseen through the night. At 10:15, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She answered. Mrs. Halberg, this is Officer Stevens with Detroit PD. There's been an incident at a property on Gratiot Avenue. Your name is listed as co-owner. We need you to come down to the station." Her heart stopped. "What kind of incident?" "I'd rather discuss it in person, ma'am. Can you come in tonight?" This wasn't part of the plan, unless, "Of course, I'll be there in 30 minutes. She hung up and immediately called Maya. "Did you send police to my door?" "No. What happened?" Senna explained the call. Maya swore softly. "It's Victor. He's trying to establish that you were involved, that you knew about the fire. If you show up at the station asking about the property, it creates suspicion. Don't go." "But if I don't, won't that look suspicious too?" "You're medicated and confused, remember? You don't understand what's happening. If they call back, tell them you need to speak to your husband first, that you don't handle the business affairs." "Okay." Senna's hands shook. "Maya, what's happening at the building? Is Victor there?" Surveillance shows he entered through the south entrance at 10:12. He's inside now. Inside an empty building, preparing to burn it down, unaware that every move was being recorded. How long until... He'll plant the accelerant, set the timer, and leave. Standard pattern is a 30-minute delay. He'll want to be far away before it ignites. "But it won't ignite. You're stopping it." "Not yet. We let him finish. Let him think he's succeeded." The moment he leaves the building, our team moves in, disables the device, secures the evidence. Then we wait for the fire that never comes. The elegance of it struck Senna. Victor would drive away believing he'd committed the perfect crime, would go home and wait for news of the fire, and instead would hear nothing. Silence. The slow, terrible realization that something had gone wrong. At 10:47, Maya called. "He's out, moving fast toward his car. Our team is inside now." "Did you get everything?" "Everything." Video of him entering with the duffel bag, planting accelerant at 3 different locations, setting timers, checking his work. It's textbook arson. Premeditated, methodical. No jury in the world would believe this was anything but intentional. Where is he now? Driving, not toward Ann Arbor. Toward you. Fear spiked cold through Senna's veins. He's coming home? He's supposed to be in Ann Arbor until midnight, remember? If he shows up early, it means he's breaking his own alibi. He's either panicking or he's coming to handle his final detail. The line was quiet for a beat. Get to a safe room. Lock the door. Keep the panic button ready. How long do I have? 20 minutes, maybe less. Senna moved fast. She grabbed her laptop, the evidence, the photos, everything she'd copied. She went to the bathroom, the only room with a lock that Victor couldn't easily break through. She engaged the deadbolt, then pushed the towel rack under the door handle for extra security. Then she waited. 18 minutes later, she heard the apartment door open. Victor's footsteps were wrong. Too fast. Too hard. None of the careful control he usually maintained. "Senna?" His voice carried through the apartment. "Senna, where are you?" She didn't answer. She heard him moving through the rooms, the bedroom, the kitchen, his office, searching. When he reached the bathroom door, he stopped. "Senna, open the door." "I'm not feeling well," she called out, keeping her voice weak. "The medication. I got sick." "Open the door." No warmth now, no pretense. "I need a minute, please." The door handle rattled. Then his fist hit the wood, hard enough to make it shake in its frame. "Open this door right now or I'll break it down." Senna's finger hovered over the panic button. Not yet. She needed him to say something incriminating, needed the cameras to catch him revealing himself. "Victor, you're scaring me." "You should be scared." His voice dropped low, dangerous. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? That I wouldn't know?" Her blood turned to ice. He knew. Somehow, he knew. "Know what?" she asked. "I don't understand." The building didn't burn, Senna. No fire. No explosion. Nothing. Someone interfered. Someone warned them. His fist hit the door again. "Was it you?" "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been home all day. I took my medication and slept." "Liar!" The word exploded from him. "You've been lying to me, playing me. All this confusion, this helplessness. It's been an act." "No, I swear. I should have killed you weeks ago. Should have pushed you down those stairs harder. Made sure you didn't wake up. But I wanted it to look natural, wanted the timeline right, wanted every detail perfect. Senna's phone was recording. The apartment cameras were recording. He was confessing to attempted murder, to the assault that had put her in the hospital. Victor, please, you're not making sense. Just calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. Something crashed against the door, a chair maybe, or his shoulder. You've ruined everything. 4 years of planning, of building the perfect frame, and you somehow figured it out. I didn't. The storage unit. Someone broke in this afternoon, went through my equipment. They didn't take anything, but they left traces, moved things, photographed things, and the only other person who knew about that unit is you. Senna's mind raced. The surveillance at the storage unit, had they been careless? Left evidence of their presence? I've never been to any storage unit, she said. I didn't even know you had one. More lies. Victor's voice turned cold, calculated. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to open this door. We're going to have a conversation about who you've been talking to, what you've told them. And then we're going to take a drive together. I'm not going anywhere with you. Yes, you are. She heard a metallic click, a gun being cocked. Because if you don't open this door in the next 10 seconds, I'm going to shoot through it. And I'll make sure the first bullet hits you somewhere painful, somewhere that won't kill you immediately. You'll bleed out slowly while we have our conversation. Your choice. Senna pressed the panic button. 3 minutes. She had to survive for 3 minutes. 10, Victor counted. 9, 8. Okay. Senna's voice cracked. Okay, I'll open it. Just put the gun away. No, you open it now. I need to unlock it. Then unlock it. She reached for the deadbolt with shaking hands, turned it slowly, but she kept the towel rack wedged under the handle. It's unlocked, she said. Victor pushed. The door held, blocked by the makeshift barricade. What the? Understanding dawned. You're barricaded in there. I'm scared, Victor. You have a gun. You're threatening me. I don't know what's happening. I'll tell you what's happening. His voice was perfectly calm now, eerily controlled. Your husband, the man you married, the man you trusted, has been planning your death since the day you signed those papers. Every accident, every injury, every moment of pain was calculated to build a narrative. Unstable wife, tragic ending, $12 million in insurance. I know, Senna whispered. Silence. Then quietly. What? I know about the insurance, the fires, the fraud, the people who died. I know everything. She heard his breathing change. How long? Since the hospital. Since you left me there alone and someone told me the truth. Who? Does it matter? Yes. The word hissed through the door. It matters because I'm going to kill them too, after I kill you, after I make you watch while I burn down every place you've ever loved, every person you've ever cared about. Your friend Rachel? She lives in one of my buildings. So convenient. She's not there anymore, Senna said. None of them are. The building was evacuated. Your fire failed, Victor. Everything you planned tonight, it failed. The silence that followed was worse than his rage had been. When he spoke again, his voice was empty. Then there's no point in making this look like an accident, is there? The first gunshot exploded through the door, splintering wood 6 inches from where Senna crouched. She screamed, throwing herself into the bathtub as another shot tore through the wall above her head. 3 minutes, she heard herself sobbing. 3 minutes and they'll be here, Victor laughed, the sound broken and terrible. 3 minutes is forever, darling, and I only need 30 seconds. Another shot. The door was disintegrating, the barricade failing. Senna looked at the window. They were on the 4th floor. Jumping meant death. But staying meant death too. She was reaching for the window latch when she heard it. Shouts from the hallway. Heavy footsteps. The apartment door crashing open. Detroit police, drop your weapon! Victor's response was another gunshot, this time directed away from the bathroom. Return fire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Senna covered her ears, curled tight in the bathtub, praying to survive the crossfire. Then silence. Footsteps approached the bathroom. A knock, gentle. Mrs. Hallberg? It's Detective Chen. You're safe. You can come out now. Senna's hands shook so badly she could barely turn the deadbolt. When she finally got the door open, she saw Detective Chen standing there with her weapon drawn, three uniformed officers behind her, and Victor, face down on the living room floor, hands cuffed behind his back, blood spreading from a wound in his shoulder. He shot at officers, Detective Chen explained, holstering her gun. We had no choice but to return fire. He'll live, unfortunately. Senna stepped over debris, broken furniture, bullet holes, the shattered remains of her marriage. She looked down at Victor. His eyes found hers. This isn't over. Yes, she said quietly. It is. Detective Morrison emerged from Victor's office, carrying the filing cabinet. Detective Chen, you need to see this. There's enough evidence in here to put him away for life. Multiple lives. More officers arrived. Crime scene techs, EMTs for Victor. Someone wrapped a blanket around Senna's shoulders, guided her to the couch. How did you get here so fast? She asked Detective Chen. I pressed the panic button 3 minutes ago. We've been outside for an hour, ever since we got word that Victor left the arson scene and was heading home. Chen sat beside her. We knew he'd be dangerous tonight. We were waiting for probable cause to enter. The gunshots. The gunshots. Chen's expression softened. You did good, Mrs. Hallberg. You got him talking, got him confessing. Everything he said is admissible. The cameras, Senna said, in the apartment. They recorded everything. We know. We've been monitoring the feeds. Darian Cade gave us access. Senna's eyes widened. You've been working with Darian. Not officially, but when a man like that brings us evidence of corruption at the city level, evidence of arson murders, evidence of a councilman on the take, we listen. And when he tells us that the wife of a serial arsonist is cooperating to bring down the whole operation, we protect her. You knew. This whole time you knew what I was doing. We suspected after our first visit to your hospital room. You gave us that same story about falling, but your eyes told a different story. And then Cade reached out, showed us what he had, what you were risking to get more. Chen squeezed her hand. You're incredibly brave. Senna didn't feel brave. She felt hollowed out, scraped raw, like she'd survived a war she never asked to fight. They took Victor away on a stretcher, still cuffed, still bleeding. He didn't look at her as they carried him past. To him, she'd already become invisible again. But this time, she'd chosen it. Darian arrived as the sun was beginning to rise, painting Detroit's skyline in shades of gold and pink. He found Senna on the building's roof, wrapped in the blanket the EMTs had given her, staring at the city. You should be resting, he said, leaning against the railing beside her. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the gunshots. That'll fade. Not quickly, but it will. They stood in silence for a moment. Below them, the city was waking up, cars filling streets, lights turning on in windows, people beginning their ordinary days with no idea that last night someone had tried to burn them alive. Is Rachel okay? Senna asked. Safe in her hotel room. All the tenants are. The gas company gave them the all clear this morning. They'll be home by afternoon. And Victor, he'll never see daylight outside a prison again. Darian's voice was certain. We have him on video committing arson. We have his confession to you recorded on multiple devices. We have the storage unit full of accelerants and equipment. We have the files from his office documenting years of fraud. And now that he's in custody, his associates are already turning on him, trying to cut deals. Councilman Petrov will be arrested before lunch, along with 3 building inspectors, 2 fire investigators, and a city planning commissioner. Victor built an empire on corruption, and it's all collapsing. Senna pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Darian, your sister, Elena, does this give her justice? His expression shifted, something raw and unguarded crossing his face. It gives her peace. She can rest now, knowing the man who killed her is paying for it. That's all the dead can ask for. I'm sorry I couldn't save her. You saved yourself and Rachel and dozens of other people who would have died in buildings Victor planned to burn. Darian turned to look at her fully. You became the thing he feared most. What's that? A woman with nothing left to lose. He paused. What will you do now? Senna thought about the question. Her apartment was a crime scene. Her marriage was destroyed. Her name would be all over the news. The woman who brought down Detroit's biggest arson ring. She had nothing. She had everything. I want to teach again, she said slowly. but not like before. Not in some pristine private school where children are shielded from the world. I want to teach kids who need it. Kids in neighborhoods like the ones Victor burned. That's a good answer. And I want to make sure the insurance money, the payouts from Victor's crimes, goes to the families. The people who lost homes, who lost loved ones, they deserve compensation. I'll help you set that up. Make sure every dollar goes where it should. Why? Senna turned to face him. Why are you helping me? Really helping me, beyond your sister, beyond the case. What do you want? Darian was quiet for a long moment. I've spent 15 years building an empire in the shadows, controlling things, manipulating things, doing whatever was necessary to maintain power. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what it was like to do something because it was right, not because it was strategic. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw past the dangerous exterior to the man beneath. You reminded me, he said simply. A kindergarten teacher who took on a monster with nothing but courage and rage. You reminded me that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing. And that being powerful means using that power to protect people who can't protect themselves. I wasn't trying to teach you anything. The best lessons never are. He smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, lighter. For what it's worth, Mrs. Hallberg, you're an excellent teacher. Senna, she said, just Senna. I'm done being Mrs. Hallberg. Senna, then. They watched the sunrise together, two people who'd come from opposite worlds and met in the space between justice and revenge, between survival and surrender. What happens now? Senna asked. With us, I mean. Are you just going to disappear back into your world? That depends. On what? On whether you want me to. Senna considered this. Darian Cade was a criminal, a man who lived in shadows and dealt in violence. He was the opposite of everything she'd thought she wanted when she married Victor, when she'd believed in fairy tales and happy endings. But he'd also been the only one who stayed, the only one who saw her when she was invisible, the only one who gave her the tools to save herself instead of trying to save her. I think, she said carefully, that I need time to figure out who I am without Victor, without fear, to rebuild. That's fair, but I also think that when I'm ready, if you're still around, maybe we could have coffee, like normal people. Darian laughed, the sound genuine and surprised. I haven't been a normal person in a very long time. Neither have I, Senna smiled. Maybe we can figure it out together. Maybe we can. They stayed on the roof until the city was fully awake, until the morning had burned away the last shadows of night. And when they finally left, walking down the stairs together, Senna felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. The media descended on the story like vultures on carrion. By noon, every news outlet in Detroit was running headlines about the arson ring, the corrupt officials, the wife who brought it all down. Senna's face was everywhere. Hospital photos the press had somehow obtained, her kindergarten ID from little scholars, grainy surveillance footage of her leaving the apartment building with Darian. She watched it unfold from a hotel room Darian had arranged, the television muted but the images speaking volumes. Victor being led into the courthouse in an orange jumpsuit. Councilman Petrov resigning in disgrace. The Gratiot Avenue building cordoned off with yellow tape while investigators combed through evidence. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing, reporters wanting interviews, lawyers offering representation, former friends emerging from silence with apologies and explanations. Rachel had called 6 times before Senna finally answered. Why didn't you tell me? Rachel's voice was thick with tears. All those months you were suffering and I let you disappear. He made it impossible, Senna said. That was the point. Isolate me so completely that when I died, no one would question it. But you didn't die. You fought back. I got lucky. Someone cared enough to notice. Darian Cade. Rachel's tone shifted, curious. The news is saying you two that there's something between you. There's nothing between us. The words came automatically, defensively. He helped me. That's all. But even as she said it, Senna remembered the way he'd looked at her on the rooftop, the way his presence had made her feel protected instead of trapped, the way he'd given her agency instead of rescue. Maybe there was something, or maybe there could be someday when she was whole enough to let someone in again. She spent 3 days in the hotel room, watching her old life disintegrate on television while lawyers and prosecutors built their case. Detective Chen visited daily with updates. "Victor's not cooperating," she reported on the second day. "Won't admit to anything, claims you orchestrated the whole thing to frame him. Says you're unstable, vengeful, that the evidence was planted." "Will that work?" "Not a chance. We have him on video committing arson. We have his own voice confessing to attempted murder. We have financial records, insurance documents, everything. His lawyer knows it's hopeless. They're already trying to negotiate a plea deal." "What kind of deal?" "Life in prison instead of multiple death sentences. Victor wants to avoid execution." Senna thought about the man who'd held her throat in the darkness, who'd planned her death with the same meticulous care he'd used to plan their wedding. "Will you give it to him?" "That's up to the DA. But between you and me, I hope he spends the rest of his life in a cell, thinking about how the woman he tried to erase is the one walking free." On the fourth day, Maya arrived with a different kind of update. "The storage unit has been processed. You need to see what was inside." They drove to the police evidence facility in silence. Maya led Senna through secure corridors to a room where items from Unit 247 were cataloged and displayed. Accelerants, timers, electronic detonators, the tools of systematic destruction. But there was more, files upon files of surveillance photos, women, different women, all with one thing in common. They'd been married to Victor Hallberg. "There were others?" Senna's voice came out strangled. Maya nodded grimly. "We're still tracking them down. So far, we've identified 3. The first died 7 years ago in a house fire, ruled accidental. The second died 5 years ago, carbon monoxide poisoning, also ruled accidental. The third disappeared," Senna finished numbly. "Let me guess. Right before a major insurance payout." "Exactly. We're reopening all 3 cases. If we can prove he killed them, then I wasn't his first victim. I was just the first one who survived." The knowledge settled over her like ice water. She'd thought she was special, that Victor's obsession with her death was personal, but she was just the latest iteration of a pattern, a role he'd cast and recast until he found the perfect victim. Except she'd refused to play the part. "There's something else," Maya said, pulling out a folder. "We found journals, his journals, detailing every relationship, every marriage, every murder. He documented everything, like he was writing a manual." "Why would he keep evidence like that?" "Arrogance, control, the need to remember his own brilliance." Maya's expression was disgusted. "Men like Victor don't think they'll ever get caught. They think they're too smart, too careful." The journals were his trophy collection. Senna forced herself to open the folder. Inside were photocopies of entries in Victor's precise handwriting, dates, names, methods, reflections on what worked, what didn't, how to improve for next time. And there, near the end, entries about her. "Senna is perfect. Isolated family, no support system, naturally compliant. The teaching job provides good cover. Stressed professional, overworked, prone to accidents. Initial insurance policies in place. Timeline, 18 to 24 months. She felt bile rise in her throat. 18 to 24 months. He'd planned from the beginning how long she'd live. Another entry, dated 6 months into their marriage. Senna showing signs of attachment. Good. The more she loves me, the less she'll question. Increased isolation protocols. Severed friendship with Rachel M. and Keisha T. Subject becoming appropriately dependent. Subject. He'd called her a subject. The final entry was from 2 weeks ago. Timeline accelerated. Subject becoming liability. Too many questions about finances. Gratchet fire will provide perfect cover for final solution. Death certificate prepared. Memorial service planned. New identity selected for next phase. Senna closed the folder before she could read more. He was already planning his next victim. Yes, we found preliminary surveillance on a woman in Chicago. Elementary school teacher, recently divorced, volunteer at a children's hospital. She matched his profile perfectly. Does she know? We contacted her yesterday. She's been placed under protection while we finish building the case. Senna thought about that unknown woman in Chicago, living her ordinary life with no idea that she'd been marked for death by a man she'd never met. How many others were out there? How many women had Victor studied, selected, discarded? I want to testify, she said suddenly. At the trial. I want to look him in the eye and tell the jury everything. Are you sure? The defense will try to destroy you on the stand. They'll bring up the medication, the confusion, paint you as unreliable. Let them try. Senna's voice was steel. I'm not confused anymore. I'm not medicated into submission. I know exactly what he did, and I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too. Maya studied her for a long moment. Okay? I'll let the DA know you're willing. The trial was set to begin in 6 weeks. 6 weeks for Senna to prepare, to find somewhere permanent to live, to start rebuilding the life Victor had systematically destroyed. Darian helped with the practical matters. He found her an apartment in a secure building, paid 6 months' rent in advance despite her protests. He connected her with the trauma therapist who specialized in domestic violence survivors. He made sure she had everything she needed to feel safe. New locks, a security system, Maya's number on speed dial. You don't have to do all this, Senna said as he helped her move boxes into the new place. It was small but bright, with windows that overlooked a park where children played. She could hear their laughter from the living room. I know I don't have to. Darian set down a box labeled books. I want to. Why? He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the park. My sister used to say that power wasn't about what you could take from people. It was about what you could give them when they needed it most. He turned to face her. You needed safety, stability, a chance to breathe. If I can provide that, why wouldn't I? Because people like you don't usually do things without expecting something in return. You're right, I do expect something. His eyes held hers. I expect you to survive this, to testify, to stand in that courtroom and show every woman watching that they don't have to stay invisible, that they can fight back and win. That's a lot of pressure. You've already done the hard part. Everything else is just showing up. But showing up, Senna learned over the following weeks, was its own kind of battle. The press camped outside her building, shouting questions whenever she appeared. Strangers recognized her in grocery stores, some offering sympathy, others accusing her of being complicit in Victor's crimes. The internet dissected every aspect of her life, her teaching record, her marriage, her appearance, her choices. Why did she stay so long? One commentator asked on a talk show Senna made the mistake of watching. There had to be signs, red flags. If she was really a victim, why didn't she leave earlier? The question burned. Because she had seen the signs. She'd ignored them, rationalized them, convinced herself that love meant accepting imperfection. By the time she understood what Victor truly was, she'd already been caught in his web. Her therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Detective Chen, helped her process the guilt. Abusers are experts at manipulation, Sarah explained during one session. They don't start with violence. They start with love, with attention, with making you feel special. By the time the abuse begins, you're already invested, already isolated, already convinced that if you just try harder, love better, be quieter, he'll become the man he was at the beginning. But that man never existed, Senna said. No, he didn't. The man you fell in love with was a performance, a role Victor played to gain access to your trust, your life, your legal status. Once he had what he needed, the mask started slipping. I should have seen it sooner. Maybe. But seeing it and having the power to leave are two different things. Victor made sure you had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, no resources to escape. That wasn't your failure. That was his design. The words helped slowly. Senna began to understand that surviving wasn't the same as complicity, that she'd done the best she could with the information and resources she had, that getting out alive meant she'd already won. 3 weeks before the trial, Rachel came to visit. They sat in Senna's small living room, drinking tea, the silence between them heavy with everything unsaid. I'm sorry, Rachel finally said. I should have tried harder, should have kept calling, kept reaching out, even when you pushed me away. He would have made it impossible, you know that. I know, but I still feel like I abandoned you. Senna set down her cup. You're here now, that's what matters. I've been following the news, the trial coverage. They're saying you're going to testify. I am. Are you scared? Terrified. Senna smiled without humor. But I'm more scared of staying silent, of letting Victor's lawyers paint me as crazy, unreliable, complicit. I need people to hear the truth. What is the truth? Senna thought about the question. The truth is that I loved someone who didn't exist. I married a ghost. And when the real man underneath revealed himself, I had two choices: disappear or fight. I chose to fight. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. You're so brave. I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn and angry and so tired of being afraid. They talked for hours that afternoon, rebuilding the friendship that Victor had tried to destroy. Rachel told her about the evacuation night, about waking up in a hotel room to news alerts about the arson ring, about realizing how close she'd come to dying. I keep thinking about it, Rachel said. If Darian Cade hadn't intervened, if you hadn't found the courage to expose Victor, I'd be dead. Everyone in that building would be dead. You're not, though. You're here, alive. That's all that matters. It's not all that matters. What matters is that you saved us. You put yourself in danger to stop a monster. That's heroism, Senna. Real heroism. But Senna didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a woman who'd barely survived, who was held together by therapy appointments and prescription medication and the stubborn refusal to let Victor Hallberg win. The trial began on a cold Monday in October. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters, protesters, curious onlookers. Senna arrived with Maya and Detective Chen flanking her, their presence a shield against the chaos. Inside, the courtroom was austere and intimidating. Victor sat at the defense table in a suit his lawyers had provided, looking every inch the successful businessman he'd pretended to be. When his eyes found Senna's, they were empty, cold, as if she'd already ceased to exist. The prosecution opened with a methodical presentation of evidence, the videos from the storage unit showing Victor planting accelerants, the recordings from the apartment where he'd confessed to planning her death, the financial records proving years of insurance fraud, the journals documenting 3 previous murders. Victor's lawyer, a sharp woman named Catherine Voss, countered with a narrative of mental illness and marital breakdown. She painted Senna as unstable, vengeful, a woman who'd fabricated evidence to destroy her husband after he'd tried to leave her. The prosecution wants you to believe my client is a monster, Voss told the jury during opening statements. But the evidence will show that Victor Hallberg is a successful businessman who made the mistake of marrying a deeply troubled woman. A woman who, when faced with divorce, decided to ruin him rather than let him go. Senna forced herself to sit still, to keep her expression neutral, even as rage burned through her veins. The trial proceeded over 2 weeks. Witnesses testified, tenants from the burned buildings, fire investigators, insurance adjusters, the woman from Chicago who'd been Victor's next intended victim. Each one added another piece to the damning mosaic. And then it was Senna's turn. She walked to the witness stand on shaking legs, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor, a man named Michael Torres, guided her through her testimony with careful questions. Mrs. Hallberg, can you tell the court how you met the defendant? At a fundraiser for the school where I taught. He donated to our program and asked for my number. And what was your relationship like in the beginning? Perfect. The word tasted bitter now. He was charming, attentive, generous. He made me feel special, safe. When did that change? Senna took a breath. Slowly. So slowly I didn't notice at first. He'd check my phone, say he was just curious. He'd want to know where I was going, who I was seeing, when I'd be home. He'd question my friendships, point out flaws in the people I loved. Eventually, it was easier to just stay home, to be available, to not make waves. Did he ever physically harm you? Yes. The first time was 8 months into our marriage. I'd mentioned wanting to go back to work, and Her voice caught. She steadied it. He grabbed my wrist hard enough to bruise. Then he apologized, said he was stressed, that it would never happen again. But it did happen again. Many times. It escalated. Broken collarbone, split lip, cracked ribs. Each time he had an explanation. Each time I believed him because I wanted to believe that the man I married was still in there somewhere. Torres walked her through the timeline, the isolation, the abuse, the discovery of Victor's crimes, the decision to fight back. Senna spoke steadily, her voice growing stronger as she recounted the apartment cameras, the storage unit evidence, the night Victor had tried to kill her. When Torres finished, Catherine Voss stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Halberg, you've painted quite a picture of yourself as a victim, but isn't it true that you benefited financially from your marriage to my client? I didn't marry him for money, but you lived in his apartment, drove his car, wore the clothes and jewelry he bought you. Yes, because he insisted. He wanted me dependent on him. Or perhaps, Voss said smoothly, you enjoyed the lifestyle. And when you discovered your husband was planning to leave you, you decided to frame him for crimes he didn't commit rather than lose access to his wealth. That's not true, isn't it? You've admitted to breaking into his office, stealing documents, working with known criminals like Darian Cade to fabricate evidence. I didn't fabricate anything, Senna's voice rose. Everything I found was real. The insurance fraud, the fires, the murders, all of it was real, and I have proof. Proof you obtained illegally, proof that could easily have been planted or altered. The videos weren't planted, the journals weren't planted. Victor's own voice confessing to attempting to kill me, that wasn't planted. Voss changed tactics. You've testified that you were taking medication for anxiety and depression, medication that affected your memory, your judgment. How can this jury trust your testimony when you yourself admit you were confused, medicated, unreliable? I was medicated because my husband was gaslighting me, making me doubt my own sanity. That's what abusers do. They make you think you're crazy so no one will believe you when you finally speak up. Or perhaps you actually are unstable, Mrs. Halberg. Perhaps you've constructed an elaborate fantasy to explain away a failed marriage. Senna looked directly at the jury. If I'd wanted to construct a fantasy, I would have made one where I wasn't beaten, terrorized, and nearly murdered by the man I loved. I would have made one where I didn't have to fight for my life in a locked bathroom while he shot through the door. I would have made one where I got to keep teaching kindergarten instead of becoming a headline. The courtroom was silent. The truth isn't pretty, Senna continued, her voice steady now. It's not a fantasy, it's trauma and fear and survival. It's realizing that the person you trusted most in the world is planning your death. It's deciding that living means fighting back, even when you're terrified, even when you have nothing left. She turned to look at Victor. He stared back, expressionless. I loved him, Senna said quietly. That's the part that hurts most. I loved someone who was never real. And he tried to kill me for it. Voss had no response to that. She dismissed Senna, who walked back to her seat on legs that barely held her. The trial continued for 3 more days. Closing arguments. Jury deliberation. The agonizing wait while 12 strangers decided whether to believe her truth or Victor's lies. They came back after 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Arson, insurance fraud, attempted murder, 3 counts of first-degree murder for the previous wives. Victor's face remained blank as the verdicts were read, but Senna saw his hands clench on the table. Saw the moment he realized he'd lost. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following week. As Victor was led away in handcuffs, he turned one last time to look at Senna. His lips moved, forming words only she could read. This isn't over. But it was. Senna knew it with the certainty of someone who'd walked through fire and emerged on the other side. Outside the courthouse, Senna faced the press for the first time. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, questions shouted from all directions. She raised her hand and the crowd quieted. I want to say something to every woman watching this who sees herself in my story, who's in a relationship where she feels small, controlled, afraid, where she's been told she's crazy, oversensitive, imagining things. Senna's voice carried across the courthouse steps. You're not imagining it. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Tell someone. And when you're ready, when you have the resources and support, get out. Because you deserve a life where you're not afraid, where you're not invisible, where you matter. A reporter called out, What will you do now? Senna smiled and it felt genuine for the first time in years. I'm going to teach again. I'm going to rebuild, and I'm going to make sure every dollar of Victor's insurance fraud goes to help the families he destroyed. What about Darian Cade? There are rumors you two are involved. Mr. Cade helped save my life. Beyond that, my personal life is my own. She walked away from the microphones, from the cameras, from the spectacle her survival had become. Maya and Detective Chen walked with her to a waiting car, where Darian sat in the back seat. You did good, he said as the car pulled away from the courthouse. I did what I had to. That's what good is. He looked at her, something soft in his expression. What now? Now I figure out who Senna Vale is when she's not afraid. And if you need help figuring that out, I know where to find you. The car drove through Detroit's streets, past the buildings Victor had tried to burn, past the lives he'd tried to destroy. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of fire. But Senna wasn't afraid of fire anymore. She'd walked through it, and she'd survived. The trial began on a cold morning in February, 6 months after the night Victor had tried to kill her. Senna sat in the gallery beside Detective Chen, her hands folded in her lap, watching as they brought him into the courtroom in shackles and an orange jumpsuit that stripped away every trace of the polished businessman he'd pretended to be. He didn't look at her. Not once during the entire proceeding did his eyes find hers, as if by refusing to acknowledge her existence he could somehow make her disappear again. But Senna was done disappearing. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They presented the surveillance footage from the Gratiot building, grainy black and white images of Victor entering with his duffel bag, moving through empty apartments, planting accelerant with the practiced ease of someone who'd done it many times before. They played the audio from the apartment, his voice cold and certain as he confessed to years of planning her death. They showed the jury photographs from the storage unit, containers of gasoline, electronic timers, blueprints marked with exit routes and security blind spots. Then they brought out the evidence from his office, the files documenting every property, every fire, every insurance claim, the death certificate with Senna's name already filled in, the ledger showing payments to city officials, to inspectors, to everyone who'd helped him build his empire on ashes and lies. The defense will argue that Mr. Hallberg was a successful businessman who made investments that unfortunately resulted in accidents, the prosecutor said, addressing the jury with quiet intensity. But the evidence shows something far different. This was not misfortune. This was not negligence. This was systematic, premeditated murder for profit. Victor Hallberg didn't just burn buildings, he burned people alive. And he did it while hiding behind the woman he'd married specifically to use as a scapegoat. The defense attorney tried. He painted Victor as a man driven mad by business pressures, by a failing marriage, by circumstances beyond his control. He suggested that Senna had been complicit, that she'd known about the properties and the insurance policies, that she was now turning on her husband to save herself from prosecution. But when Senna took the stand, that narrative crumbled. Mrs. Hallberg, the prosecutor began gently, can you tell the jury about the first time your husband hit you? Senna's voice was steady. 3 months after our wedding, I'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. He slapped me across the face, then apologized for hours, brought me flowers, told me he'd been under stress, that it would never happen again. But it did happen again. Yes, it got worse. The hitting became punching. The apologies became threats. And slowly, he started taking away everything that made me who I was. My job, my friends, my sense of self. By the time I understood what was happening, I had nothing left. No one to call. Nowhere to go. When did you discover that your husband was using you as part of his criminal enterprise? The day after my last hospitalization, someone came to my room and told me the truth, that I was listed as co-owner on properties I'd never seen, that insurance claims were filed in my name, that Victor had been building a case against me for years, making it look like I was the one responsible for the fires. The prosecutor walked her through everything, the discovery of the files, the surveillance operation, the night Victor had tried to shoot her through a locked door while confessing to planning her murder. Why didn't you just run? The prosecutor asked. When you first learned the truth, why didn't you take the offer of a new identity and disappear? Senna looked at the jury. Because people were going to die. My husband had already killed at least 11 people in his fires. He was planning another one. My friend lived in that building. Families lived there. Children. If I'd run, they would have burned. I couldn't live with that. So you chose to stay, to risk your life, to gather evidence that would stop him. Yes. Were you afraid? Terrified, every moment. But I was more afraid of becoming the woman he'd tried to make me, invisible, powerless, erased. I'd rather die fighting than live as a ghost. The courtroom was silent. Even the defense attorney seemed to understand that there was no cross-examination that could undo the impact of her testimony. They called other witnesses, Rachel, who testified about the evacuation and the fire that never happened. Darian's testimony was careful, measured. He acknowledged his criminal background but presented himself as someone who'd provided information to law enforcement, who'd helped protect civilians. The prosecutor had clearly coached him on what to say and what to leave unsaid. Councilman Petrov testified from his own prison cell, having already pled guilty to corruption charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. He described the payments Victor had made, the permits he'd fast-tracked, the investigations he'd buried. His testimony implicated 3 other city officials, all of whom were facing their own trials. Elena Vasquez's story was told through photographs and witness statements, her artwork displayed on screens, her complaints to the city documented, her death certificate presented as evidence of what happened to people who stood in Victor Hallberg's way. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: 11 counts of murder, 6 counts of arson, fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy. The list went on, each verdict hammering another nail into the coffin of Victor's freedom. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Victor stood. He looked directly at Senna for the first time since the trial began. "You were supposed to be nothing," he said, his voice hollow. "A means to an end. A name on paper. You weren't supposed to matter." "But I did," Senna said quietly, "and that's what destroyed you." The judge sentenced him to 11 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole. Victor would die in prison, and even then, he'd still owe the state hundreds of years. As they led him away, he finally broke. Senna watched him crumble, this man who'd seemed so powerful, so invincible, reduced to a sobbing figure in handcuffs being dragged from the courtroom. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge, no closure. Just the quiet certainty that it was finished. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust toward her face, cameras flashing, voices shouting questions. "Mrs. Hallberg, how does it feel to know your husband will die in prison? Are you afraid he'll send someone after you? What's next for you?" Detective Chen and Maya flanked her, creating a path through the crowd. But Senna stopped, turned to face the cameras. "My name is Senna Vale," she said clearly. "Not Mrs. Hallberg, not anymore. And what's next is rebuilding, not just my life, but the community Victor Hallberg tried to destroy." She didn't take questions. She walked to the car where Darian was waiting and let him drive her away from the circus, from the ending, from the woman she used to be. They didn't speak during the drive. There was nothing left to say about Victor, about the trial, about the past. Instead, they drove through Detroit streets as afternoon light slanted through buildings, past neighborhoods that were slowly coming back to life. Darian pulled up in front of a building on the east side. Old brick, recently renovated with new windows and a fresh coat of paint. "What is this?" Senna asked. "Your next chapter, if you want it." They got out of the car. Darian unlocked the front door and led her inside. The space took her breath away. It had been gutted and rebuilt, open and bright, with high ceilings and skylights flooding everything with natural light. The main floor was set up as a classroom, with child-sized tables and chairs, shelves lined with books, art supplies organized in colorful bins. There was a reading corner with cushions and a rug shaped like the world, a music area with instruments, a science station with magnifying glasses and terrariums. "The second floor is offices and meeting rooms," Darian said, "for tutoring, parent workshops, community programs. The third floor is residential, apartments for families in transition, people who've lost housing, who are rebuilding, who need a safe place while they get back on their feet." Senna walked through the space, running her fingers along the bookshelves, picking up picture books she'd loved as a teacher. "How did you—" "Insurance money from Victor's properties. The court ordered it paid to his victims' families as restitution, but there were also funds left over, money from properties that hadn't burned, from legitimate investments. The judge allowed me to petition for those funds to be used for community rebuilding." He gestured around them. "This was one of Elena's buildings, where she had her studio. I thought she'd want it to become something that helped people instead of hurt them." "It's perfect," Senna whispered. "It's yours. If you want it, the foundation is set up in your name, the Elena Vasquez Community Center. You'd run the early education program, manage the family services, decide how to use the space. There's funding for 5 years, with the possibility of grants and donations to extend it further. Senna turned to face him. Why are you giving this to me? Because you earned it. Because you risked everything to save people you didn't even know. Because I've spent 15 years taking from this city, and you've shown me what it looks like to give back. He moved closer. And because I believe you'll make it something extraordinary. Tears blurred her vision. I don't know how to do this. Run a center, manage programs. I'm just a kindergarten teacher. You're a woman who took down a criminal empire with nothing but courage and determination. I think you can figure out how to run a community center. She laughed through her tears. When do I start? Whenever you're ready. Senna looked around the space again, imagining it filled with children. Kids from the neighborhoods Victor had burned, from families he'd displaced, from communities he'd torn apart. She imagined giving them what she'd almost lost: safety, education, hope, the chance to be seen. I'm ready now. Over the next 3 months, Senna threw herself into building the center. She hired teachers, other women who'd been through trauma, who understood what it meant to start over. She reached out to social workers, to family services, to every organization that worked with at-risk communities. She designed curriculum that didn't just teach reading and math, but emotional resilience, conflict resolution, self-worth. Rachel became her assistant director, bringing her organizational skills and her fierce commitment to helping others. Detective Chen volunteered as a safety coordinator, teaching kids about personal boundaries and when to ask for help. Maya handled security, making sure the center was a place where people could feel protected. And Darian was there. Not running things, not taking over, but supporting. He funded field trips and supplies. He used his connections to cut through bureaucratic red tape. He showed up on weekends to help paint murals and assemble furniture. You don't have to do this, Senna told him one evening as they worked together hanging artwork in the hallways. You've already given so much. I want to be here, he said simply, unless you don't want me here. She looked at him. This man who'd been a stranger 6 months ago, who'd become her ally, her partner in rebuilding. He'd changed too. The sharp edges had softened. The dangerous intensity had become focused determination. He was still who he was, still operated in gray areas, still had power and influence that came from places she didn't ask about. But he was using it differently now. I want you here, she said. Their relationship evolved slowly, carefully. Coffee dates that turned into long conversations about everything except the trial. Walks through the city where he showed her Detroit's hidden corners, the places where beauty survived despite everything. Dinners where they talked about their childhoods, their dreams, the people they'd been before life had made them into fighters. I never wanted this life, Darian told her one night over Thai food in a tiny restaurant in Corktown. When I was young, I wanted to be a teacher, like Elena. She was going to teach art. I was going to teach history. We were going to change the world through education. What happened? Our parents were killed when I was 19. Home invasion. Wrong place, wrong time. Elena was 16. Suddenly, I had a sister to raise and no legal way to make enough money to do it. So I made illegal money instead. And I was good at it. Too good. By the time Elena was old enough that I could have stopped, I was in too deep. It became who I was. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out who I could have been, if I'd made different choices, if I'd had someone show me there was another way. He met her eyes. You're showing me that now. I'm not trying to change you. I know, that's why it's working. The center opened in May, on a bright spring morning with blue skies and the smell of lilacs drifting through open windows. They'd invited the community, families from the neighborhood, survivors of Victor's fires, anyone who wanted to see what had been built from the ashes. Senna stood at the front of the room and welcomed them. This center exists because of pain, she began. Because people lost homes, lost loved ones, lost pieces of themselves to someone else's greed. But it also exists because of hope. Because even in our darkest moments, we chose to believe that something better was possible. She told them about Elena Vasquez, the artist whose murder had set everything in motion. She explained that this had been Elena's building, her studio, her dream. She wanted to create beauty in the world. She wanted to help people see things differently. And even though she's gone, Her vision lives on in this space. Every child who learns to read here, every family that finds stability here, every person who discovers their own strength here, they're carrying forward what she started. The crowd applauded. Parents signed their children up for programs. Community members volunteered. By the end of the day, they had a waiting list. That evening, after everyone had left, Senna sat in the empty classroom with Darian. They shared a bottle of wine and looked at the artwork the children had created during the opening celebration, paintings and drawings full of bright colors and impossible hope. She would have loved this, Darian said quietly, holding up a picture of a girl dancing under a rainbow. Elena. She would have loved everything about it. Tell me something about her, Senna said. Something that made her who she was. Darian smiled, the expression bittersweet. She laughed at everything, even things that weren't funny. She said laughter was a choice, and she chose it every day because the world tried so hard to make people sad. She'd find joy in the smallest things, a perfect cup of coffee, a dog wearing a sweater, the way light hit water. She taught me that happiness wasn't something you waited for. It was something you created. I wish I could have known her. You do know her. You're living the life she would have wanted, making the choices she would have made, building something that helps instead of harms. He set down his wine glass. You honor her better than I ever could. Senna reached for his hand. We honor her together. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set through the skylights, painting the classroom in shades of gold and amber. Senna, Darian said after a while, what would you think about dinner? Actual dinner, not just working together and grabbing food after. A real date. She smiled. I think I'd like that very much. Even knowing who I am, what I've done. You're not defined by your worst moments any more than I'm defined by mine. We're both just people trying to do better than we did yesterday. She squeezed his hand. Besides, you've shown me something important. What's that? That power isn't about control. It's about choice. You could have used your resources for anything, to build your empire, to take revenge, to hurt the people who hurt you. Instead, you chose to help, to protect, to create something good. That takes more strength than violence ever could. You make me want to keep choosing that, he said, every day. Then that's what you'll do. Their first official date was the following Friday, dinner at a small Italian restaurant, the same one where Victor had ordered takeout that night months ago. But this time, the memories held no power. Senna ordered what she actually wanted instead of what Victor had always chosen for her. She laughed freely, spoke her mind, disagreed with Darian about movies and music and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It absolutely does not, he insisted. You're wrong. It's a perfect combination of sweet and savory. It's a crime against Italian cuisine. You're being dramatic. I'm being correct. She realized, watching him argue passionately about pizza toppings with a grin on his face, that this was what freedom felt like. The ability to be herself, completely and unguardedly, with someone who saw her clearly and still chose to stay. Over the following months, they built something neither of them had expected. Not a fairy tale romance, they'd both seen too much darkness for that, but something real and solid and true. They were partners in the center, in rebuilding the community, in figuring out how to live with their pasts while building toward their futures. Darian slowly extracted himself from the darker parts of his business, transitioning to legitimate investments and property development. It wasn't a complete transformation. He'd never be entirely clean, and Senna understood that. But he was trying, moving toward the light instead of away from it. And Senna bloomed. She hired more staff, expanded the programs, opened a second location in a different neighborhood. She became a voice for domestic violence survivors, speaking at conferences and fundraisers about the importance of economic independence, of community support, of believing women when they said they were in danger. The trial had made her name known. The center made her work known. And slowly, inevitably, she became someone people listened to. 1 year after Victor's sentencing, Senna stood in front of a crowd of 500 people at a fundraising gala. The event was held at the most prestigious hotel in Detroit, in the same ballroom where she'd last appeared publicly as Victor's wife. Invisible, controlled, erased. Now she stood at the podium in a dress she'd chosen herself, surrounded by people who'd come to support the center and told her story. A year ago, I was a woman with no name, no identity, no future. My husband had systematically destroyed every piece of who I was, turning me into a ghost in my own life. He did this because he needed me to be nothing so he could be everything, and it almost worked. She paused, looking out at the crowd. She saw Rachel, tears streaming down her face. Maya and Detective Chen both nodding encouragement. Darian, standing in the back, his expression proud and fierce. But something happened that changed everything. Someone saw me when I was invisible. Someone believed me when I had no credibility. Someone gave me the tools to fight back instead of fighting for me. And that made all the difference. She talked about the center, about the families they'd helped, about the children who were learning that they mattered, that they were seen, that they had value beyond what anyone else told them. We've served over 300 families this year. We've provided education to 200 children. We've helped 87 women leave abusive situations and start new lives. We've placed 93 people in safe housing, and we're just beginning. The applause was thunderous. When the formal program ended, people approached her, survivors wanting to share their stories, donors wanting to help, community leaders wanting to partner. She spoke with each of them, present and engaged in a way she'd never been able to be as Victor's wife. Darian found her near midnight, as the crowd was thinning. Ready to go home? Home. The word still felt new. She'd moved out of the apartment 6 months ago, into a renovated loft in Corktown, her space, chosen by her, filled with things she actually loved. Darian had helped her move, had spent weekends painting walls and assembling furniture, had never once suggested she move in with him or change her plans to accommodate his preferences. Almost. I want to check on one more thing. They walked through the ballroom to the silent auction tables, where photographs of the center's children were displayed alongside artwork and donated items. Senna stopped at a particular photo, a little girl named Maria, 5 years old, whose family had lost everything in one of Victor's fires. In the photo, Maria was laughing, paint covering her hands and face, holding up a picture she'd made of her family standing in front of a house with a rainbow overhead. Her mother told me something last week, Senna said quietly. She said that before the center, Maria had nightmares every night about fire. She'd wake up screaming, convinced everything was burning. But after 3 months in our art therapy program, the nightmares stopped. Now Maria paints rainbows instead of fire. You did that, Darian said. We did that. All of us. Everyone who chose to build instead of destroy. They left the gala hand in hand, walking out into the Detroit night. The city spread around them, still rough in places, still recovering, still fighting, but also beautiful, also resilient, also full of people who refused to let darkness win. Senna, Darian said as they reached his car. There's something I want to ask you. She turned to face him, saw nervousness in his expression, an emotion she'd rarely seen from him. I know we said we'd take things slow, that we'd figure this out day by day, and I'm fine with that, I am. But I also need you to know. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You've changed my life. Not just by showing me a different way to live, but by making me want to be better than I've been. Every day I spend with you, I understand more clearly what it means to actually live instead of just survive. Darian, I'm not asking you to marry me, he said quickly. I know that institution holds nothing but pain for you right now. Maybe someday, if you ever want that again, we can talk about it. But right now, I'm just asking if you'll consider building a life with me. Not you moving into my world or me moving into yours, but us creating something new together, something that belongs to both of us. Senna looked at him, this complicated, damaged, beautiful man who'd given her back her life and then stood beside her while she figured out what to do with it. She thought about the year they'd spent together, the way he'd never tried to control her, never diminished her, never made her feel like she was less than whole. Yes, she said simply. Let's build something new. He pulled her close, kissed her under the Detroit stars, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Senna felt completely safe. The next 2 years passed in a blur of growth and healing. The center expanded to 4 locations across Detroit. They served over 1,000 families, provided education to hundreds of children, helped countless women leave dangerous situations and start fresh. Senna became a recognized advocate, consulted by lawmakers about domestic violence policy, invited to speak at national conferences. And through it all, Darian was there, not leading, not controlling, but supporting. He'd become legitimate, or as legitimate as someone with his past could be. His property development company now focused on affordable housing and community spaces. He funded scholarships for kids from the neighborhoods he'd once exploited. He wasn't a saint, would never be a saint, but he was trying. Every day, choosing to be better than he'd been. Their relationship deepened into something neither of them had expected. They moved in together after the first year, into a house they chose together in a neighborhood that was equal distance from both their worlds. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's boundaries, each other's dreams. Senna learned that Darian talked in his sleep, that he couldn't cook to save his life, that he cried during animated movies but kept a stone face during horror films, that he had nightmares about Elena sometimes, waking up gasping her name, and needed to be held without questions until the panic passed. Darian learned that Senna hoarded books, that she sang off-key in the shower, that she needed silence in the mornings and conversation at night, that she still flinched sometimes at sudden movements, still checked locks 3 times before bed, still carried the panic button even though Victor was locked away forever. They learned how to be people together. Not perfect people, not healed people, but real people who chose each other every single day. On the 3rd anniversary of the night Victor was arrested, Senna stood in the original center, Elena's building, and looked at what they'd created. The walls were covered with children's artwork. The shelves overflowed with books in a dozen languages. The calendar was full of programs, classes, workshops, events. Rachel found her there. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about how different everything is. 3 years ago, I was lying in a hospital bed with no one to call. Now I have this," he gestured around them, "a community, a purpose, a life that's actually mine." "You built this," Rachel said. "You survived something that would have destroyed most people, and instead of letting it break you, you used it to help others. That's extraordinary." "I couldn't have done it alone." "No, but you had the courage to accept help when it was offered. That's its own kind of strength." They heard children's laughter from the next room. A music class ending, kids streaming into the hallway with instruments and smiles, and that particular chaos that comes with young energy and joy. A little girl ran up to Senna. Miss Senna, I learned a new song. Want to hear?" "Always," Senna said, crouching down to the girl's level. The child sang, off-key and enthusiastic, making up half the words. And Senna listened like it was the most important performance in the world, because in that moment it was. This was what she'd fought for. Not revenge against Victor, not even justice, though that had been necessary. She'd fought for this, for children to be children, for families to have stability, for people to believe they deserved good things. She'd fought for the right to exist loudly instead of quietly, to take up space instead of shrinking, to matter. That evening, Darian made dinner, or rather, he ordered dinner and arranged it on plates to make it look like he'd cooked. Senna saw through it immediately, but appreciated the effort. "I have something for you," he said after they'd eaten. He handed her an envelope. Inside were documents, property deeds, legal papers, official stamps, and signatures. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "The building. Elena's building. The original center." He watched her face. "It's yours. Fully yours. I've transferred ownership to you personally, separate from the foundation. Whatever happens, to me, to us, to anything, it's yours. No one can take it away." Senna's eyes filled with tears. "Darian, I can't. This is too much." "It's not enough," he said firmly. "You've built something extraordinary there, something that honors my sister better than anything I could have done. It should belong to you." She set down the papers and moved around the table to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. For staying. For showing me that not all powerful men are dangerous." He pulled her close. "You showed me that being powerful means using strength to protect, not to control. We taught each other." They stayed like that for a long moment, two people who'd found each other in darkness and chosen to walk toward light together. Later that night, lying in bed, Senna's phone buzzed with an email. She almost ignored it. It was late. She was tired. It could wait until morning. But something made her check. The email was from the prosecutor who'd handled Victor's case. The subject line read, "Thought you should know." She opened it. Victor Hallberg had died in prison. heart attack. Quick and relatively painless, according to the medical report. He'd been alone in his cell when it happened. No one had been with him at the end. Senna stared at the words, waiting to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, closure. But all she felt was a distant, quiet sadness, not for Victor, but for the man he could have been if he'd chosen differently. For the lives he'd destroyed. For the years she'd lost to fear. "What is it?" Darian asked, sensing her tension. She showed him the email. He read it silently, then set the phone aside and pulled her close. "How do you feel?" he asked. "I don't know. I thought I'd feel more. Happy or relieved or something. But mostly I just feel tired. Like I've been carrying a weight for so long that even though it's gone, I can still feel where it used to be." "That's normal. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel free. Some days you'll feel the ghost of what was. Both are valid." "Did you feel this way when Elena's killer was caught?" "Yes. I thought justice would feel like triumph. Instead, it felt like emptiness, like the thing I'd been fighting for was finished, but she was still gone. Nothing brought her back." Senna turned to face him fully. But something good came from it. The center, the families we've helped, the lives we've changed. That has to mean something. "It means everything," Darian said. "It means her death wasn't the end of her story. It means she's still making the world better, even though she's gone. That's the best kind of legacy." Senna thought about that, about how the worst moments of their lives had become the foundation for something beautiful, how pain had transformed into purpose, how two broken people had found each other and built something whole. "I want to do something," she said suddenly. "Tomorrow, at the center, a memorial. Not for Victor, for everyone he hurt, all the people who died in the fires, all the families who lost homes, everyone who suffered because of his choices. I want to honor them, make sure they're remembered." "We'll make it happen," Darian promised. They held the memorial a week later in the courtyard of the center. They'd planted a garden there, flowers and trees, benches and pathways, and in the center stood a bronze plaque with the names of everyone who had died in Victor's fires. Elena Vasquez, Marcus Johnson, the Torres family, mother, father, 2 children. Names and dates and brief descriptions of who they'd been. Artist, teacher, mechanic, student, real people with real lives reduced to victims of someone else's greed. Senna stood before the gathered crowd, survivors, family members, community members, and spoke. "We're here today to remember people who should still be with us. People who died because someone chose profit over humanity, because someone decided their lives didn't matter as much as money." She read each name aloud, told their stories, shared memories that family members had contributed, honored them as individuals instead of statistics. "They're gone," she said, her voice breaking, "and nothing we do can bring them back, but we can make sure they're not forgotten. We can make sure their deaths meant something. We can build a world where what happened to them never happens again." She invited people to come forward and share their own memories. One by one, they did. Elena's best friend talked about her laugh. Marcus Johnson's daughter described how he'd taught her to fix cars. The Torres family's neighbor shared how they'd welcomed her when she moved to Detroit, how they'd made her feel like family. By the time everyone had spoken, the sun was setting and there wasn't a dry eye in the courtyard. Darian was the last to approach the memorial. He placed a single red rose at the base, Elena's favorite flower, and stood there with his hand on the plaque. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," he said quietly, "but I promise I'll keep honoring you every day. In every choice I make, you deserved so much more than you got, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure your dreams live on." He stepped back, and Senna took his hand. The crowd dispersed slowly, people stopping to touch the plaque, to leave flowers, to take a moment with memories that still hurt. When everyone had gone, Senna and Darian sat on a bench in the garden, watching the last light fade from the sky. "Do you think we've done enough?" Senna asked. "To honor them? To make their deaths mean something? I think we've done what we could, and I think we'll keep doing more. Every child we teach, every family we help, every person who finds safety here, they're all part of that honor. We're building a world where people matter more than profit. That's the opposite of what Victor stood for. That's the best revenge." "I don't want revenge anymore," Senna said softly. I just want to keep building. Then that's what we'll do. 5 years after that night in the hospital room when Senna had whispered, "There's no one," and Darian had stayed, they stood together at the opening of their 7th community center. This one was in the neighborhood where Darian had grown up, where Elena had gone to school, where their parents had died. It was the largest center yet. 3 floors of classrooms, family services, job training programs, affordable housing. They'd hired 50 staff members, all from the community, all committed to the mission. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the mayor spoke about community transformation. The governor sent a representative to praise their work. National news outlets covered the story. The crime boss turned philanthropist. The domestic violence survivor turned advocate, building something beautiful from ashes and pain. But Senna barely heard any of it. She was watching the children streaming through the front doors, their faces bright with excitement and curiosity. She was seeing the mothers who no longer looked over their shoulders in fear, the families who finally had stable housing, the teenagers learning job skills that would change their futures. This was what mattered, not the accolades or the recognition, but the lives being changed, the cycles being broken, the hope being planted. When it was her turn to speak, Senna kept it brief. 7 years ago, I had nothing. No home, no job, no identity, no future. I was a ghost in my own life, erased by someone who saw me as a tool to be used and discarded. If you'd told me then that I'd be standing here today, having helped thousands of people, having built something that matters, I wouldn't have believed you. She paused, looking out at the crowd. But someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Someone saw potential when I saw only despair. And that changed everything. So to everyone here today, the families using our services, the community members supporting us, the staff making it all happen, I want you to know you matter. Your life has value. Your story is important. And if you're going through darkness right now, please hold on. Please keep fighting. Because there are people who see you, who believe in you, who will help you build something better. The applause was deafening, but Senna's eyes found Darian's in the crowd. And in that look was everything they'd been through together, everything they'd built, everything they'd become. After the ceremony, they walked through the new center together, checking details, greeting staff, watching children explore their new space. In one classroom, Senna found a little girl drawing a picture of a house with rainbow windows and sunshine overhead. "What are you drawing?" Senna asked, crouching beside her. "My new home," the girl said proudly. "We're going to live upstairs, in the apartments. My mom says it's safe there, that no one can hurt us anymore." Senna's throat tightened. "It is safe. I promise." "Are you Miss Senna, the one who made this place?" "I helped make it, but it belongs to everyone, including you." The girl smiled and went back to her drawing, adding more details. Flowers in the yard, birds in the sky, a family holding hands in front of the house. Senna stood and found Darian waiting for her at the door. "You okay?" he asked. "Better than okay." She took his hand. "I was just thinking about how far we've come, how much has changed. Any regrets?" She considered the question seriously. "I regret that people had to die before we found our purpose. I regret that Elena and the others didn't get to see this. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret choosing to build instead of hide. And I don't regret finding you." I don't regret any of it either," Darian said. "Not even the pain. Because it led to this. To you. To a life that actually means something beyond power and control." They walked out of the center as the sun was setting, painting Detroit's skyline in shades of amber and gold. The city spread around them, still rough in places, still healing, still fighting, but also beautiful, also resilient, also full of people who refused to let their worst moments define their entire story. "What do you think Elena would say?" Senna asked, "if she could see all of this?" Darian was quiet for a moment. "I think she'd say that love is stronger than hate, that building is more powerful than destroying, and that the best way to honor the people we've lost is to become the kind of people they believed we could be. Then that's what we'll keep doing. For as long as we can. For as long as it takes." They drove home through streets they'd both helped rebuild, past neighborhoods that were slowly coming back to life, under a sky that promised tomorrow would come whether they were ready or not. And Senna Vale, No longer invisible, no longer broken, no longer defined by the man who'd tried to erase her. Felt something she'd thought was lost forever. She felt free,